Ladies and gentlemen, let me start with something that might rattle you a bit. Your comfort zone is not a sanctuary. It's a slow death sentence. Now, I know that sounds dramatic, but it should be because we've been sold this lie. That comfort is the goal. That safety, stability, and routine are where happiness lives. But that's not the truth. That's the trap. Let me tell you what comfort really is. It's the enemy of progress. It's the sneaky little voice that says, it just hit snooze one more time. It's the excuse that says, I'll start on Monday. It's the fear dressed up in pajamas and Netflix binges, convincing you that you've got time. But you don't. You're not stuck. You're scared. And the difference between staying where you are and becoming who you were meant to be is simple. 5 seconds of courage. That's all it takes. That one moment when you choose to move, to speak up, to take the leap, even when your brain is screaming at you to stay safe. Look, I didn't get to where I am by waiting to feel ready. If I waited until I felt confident, motivated, or fully prepared, I'd still be stuck on the couch, Googling how to change your life and wondering why nothing ever happens. Here's the truth bomb. You didn't know you needed today. You're never going to feel ready. But you don't need to feel ready. You just need to act. Discomfort is the price of admission to a meaningful life. You want more? You want growth. You want to level up in your career, your relationships, your mindset. You've got to get uncomfortable. Because here's what I know. Nothing new happens inside your comfort zone. Nothing. It's a loop. Wake up, go through the motions, survive the day, repeat. It's soul-numbing. It's passion-killing. And worst of all, it feels normal. But that fear you feel just outside your comfort zone, that's the signal. That's the GPS saying, hey, you're alive. Pay attention. There's more for you here. So let me challenge you. Right now, not tomorrow, not next week. Now. Do something that terrifies you, something that forces your heart to beat a little faster. Raise your hand, speak up, say yes, say no. Launch the thing, quit the thing, move, start. You've got 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Move. Because if you don't, that comfort zone, it's not going to kill you quickly. It's going to bleed your potential out one excuse at a time. And you deserve so much more than that. That comfort is seductive, but dangerous. It's wrapped in warm familiarity and filled with routines that lull us into a false sense of security. It feels safe. It feels easy. It feels like you've got everything under control. And that's exactly why it's so dangerous, because when you're comfortable, you're not growing. You're not pushing boundaries. You're not becoming who you could be. You're just maintaining. And slowly, quietly, you're shrinking. Think about it. Every time you tell yourself, I'll do it tomorrow, what you're really saying is, I'd rather stay comfortable today. Every time you avoid the difficult conversation, skip the gym, or scroll through your phone instead of writing that business plan, you're choosing comfort over courage. You're making a decision to settle for where you are, instead of fighting for where you want to be. And the more you choose comfort, the easier it becomes to stay stuck. Until one day, you look around and realize years have gone by, and nothing has changed. Here's the harsh truth. Comfort is not your friend. It's a trap. It whispers lies like, you're fine where you are, or you've got time, or you don't want to fail, do you? But those lies cost you. They cost you growth. They cost you opportunity. They cost you a future where you're actually proud of yourself. And the worst part, you usually don't even see the damage being done because comfort doesn't scream. It's quiet. It's subtle. It creeps in and makes itself at home, until discomfort feels like danger and routine feels like purpose. But comfort is not the same as happiness. Don't confuse the two. True happiness comes from progress, from stretching, from doing the thing you were scared of and realizing you survived. It comes from taking a risk, failing, and learning that failure didn't kill you. It taught you. It made you stronger. You will never feel fulfilled just sitting in the same place, doing the same things, and avoiding every challenge that might cause discomfort. You were not built to coast. You were built to climb. Think about the moments you're most proud of. I guarantee you they didn't come from a place of ease. They came from adversity, from risk, from stepping into the unknown and doing something that scared the hell out of you. Whether it was standing up for yourself, starting a new chapter in your life, or simply showing up when you didn't feel like it, you grew in that moment. You didn't grow when things were smooth and predictable. You grew when you faced resistance, when you had to show grit. That's where confidence is born, not from success, but from the decision to show up and try again and again. Now let me be real with you. It's not your fault that you crave comfort. It's wired into your brain. Your mind is designed to protect you, to keep you safe from risk and danger. And in the primitive part of your brain, discomfort still equals threat. But we're not being chased by predators anymore. The danger today is sending an email, applying for a job, launching a podcast, asking for feedback. And those things are not life-threatening, but your brain treats them like they are. That's why it feels so hard. That's why you hesitate. But just because your brain resists doesn't mean you have to obey it. This is where awareness comes in. When you realize that comfort is killing your momentum, you have a choice. You can listen to the voice that says, stay safe, or you can challenge it. You can use that fear as a signal, not to stop, but to move. Because that fear is a green light. It means something important is on the other side. It's not about leaping out of your comfort zone in one giant, dramatic moment. It's about pushing the edge a little further every single day. Tiny acts of courage add up. One uncomfortable conversation, one early morning, one bold move. Stack those and suddenly you're in a different place entirely, mentally, emotionally, professionally. And here's what no one tells you. The more time you spend outside your comfort zone, the more your comfort zone expands. What once scared you becomes second nature. What once felt impossible becomes your new normal. And then you push again. And again. That's how transformation works. That's how you change your life. Not overnight, but by choosing discomfort on purpose. So the next time you feel the pull toward comfort, pause. Ask yourself, is this choice helping me grow or keeping me stuck? And then decide. Not based on what feels easy, but on what will make you proud tomorrow. Because that's the life you deserve. Not one wrapped in comfort, but one fueled by courage. Growth doesn't happen inside your comfort zone. And that might sound simple, but it's a truth most people spend their entire lives avoiding. We are wired to seek familiarity, to crave ease, to stick with what we know because it feels safe. But nothing remarkable, nothing life-changing, nothing transformational ever came from staying in a place where everything is predictable. You don't build muscle without resistance. You don't build character without struggle. And you definitely don't build a meaningful life by playing it safe. That's it. Think about a time in your life when you truly evolved, when you came out the other side wiser, stronger, or more confident. I guarantee you that season wasn't marked by comfort. It was probably filled with uncertainty, with fear, with failure. Maybe you didn't even know what the outcome would be. You just knew you had to try. And in trying and pushing through the unknown, that's when the growth happened. It wasn't clean or easy, but it was necessary. And that's the thing. Discomfort is the price of transformation. Staying in your comfort zone feels good in the short term. It gives you the illusion that everything is under control. You've got your routines, your habits, your same old days, but slowly you start to feel stuck. You get bored, unfulfilled, restless. That's your soul knocking on the door, reminding you that you're meant for more, that you've stopped expanding, that you're repeating, not evolving. The comfort zone isn't just a physical space, it's a mental prison. It's the voice in your head that says, don't try, don't risk, don't fail. But growth lives on the other side of all those things. You see, when you try something new, when you take a risk, your brain lights up. You're building new neural pathways. You're learning. You're adapting. You're becoming a more complex, capable version of yourself. Even if you fail, you've gained something. Knowledge, experience, resilience. But when you stay in the same pattern, day after day, year after year, you're not building. You're decaying. You're becoming more rigid, more fearful, more disconnected from your potential. The very thing that feels safe is actually eating away at your ability to grow. And let's be honest, growth isn't glamorous. It's messy. It's uncomfortable. It asks you to stretch beyond what you think you're capable of. It requires you to make mistakes, to be vulnerable, to admit you don't have all the answers. But that's the point. Because only when you're stretched can you expand. Only when you're challenged do you truly discover what you're made of. And the greatest victories in life, whether it's starting a business, healing a relationship, writing a book, or running a marathon, only happen when you're willing to move through discomfort and uncertainty. You don't get growth without a decision. You don't magically feel ready one day. You have to decide to take the leap before you know if you'll fly. And that's terrifying, sure, but it's also the most alive you'll ever feel. Growth feels like fear in the beginning because your mind is stepping into the unfamiliar. But fear is not the enemy. It's the signal that you're on the edge of something meaningful. People think they need confidence before they start. No, you build confidence by starting. You earn it. One step at a time, one risk at a time, one act of courage at a time. We are all works in progress, but progress demands motion. And motion means doing something different. So if you're waiting until you're ready, until things feel easy, you'll be waiting forever. Growth doesn't show up with a welcome sign. It shows up disguised as effort, rejection, challenge, and fear. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you start making real moves, because the goal isn't to avoid discomfort. The goal is to get comfortable being uncomfortable. That's how champions are made. That's how leaders rise. That's how ordinary people build extraordinary lives. And here's what's beautiful. The more you step outside your comfort zone, the bigger your world becomes. You meet new people. You learn new skills. You discover strengths you didn't know you had. You start seeing yourself not as someone who can't, but as someone who can't, but as someone who can. And that belief, that identity shift, it's everything. Because once you see yourself as someone who grows, who rises, who evolves, you'll never let comfort trap you again. So stop waiting for the perfect time. Stop looking for permission. Stop making excuses that your dreams are too far away or too hard or too risky. The distance between where you are and where you want to be is not measured in miles. It's measured in bold choices. Every time you say yes to something that scares you, every time you try something new, every time you show up when you don't feel like it, that's a vote for the person you're becoming. And that person, that future version of you, they're not waiting inside your comfort zone. They're waiting on the other side. Fear is a compass. It's not just something to be avoided or pushed down. It's something to pay attention to. Most people misunderstand fear. They see it as a stop sign, as a reason to freeze, as proof that they're not ready, not good enough, not capable. But the truth is, fear is rarely a warning that you're in danger. More often than not, it's a signal that you're about to do something meaningful. It shows up at the edge of growth. It shows up when you care. And if you learn how to listen to it, not obey it, but listen, it will point you toward the life you're meant to live. The things we fear the most tend to be tied to our greatest desires. We fear speaking in public because we want to be heard. We fear starting a business because we dream of building something of our own. We fear telling someone how we feel because connection matters to us. Fear is tied to value. It shows you what's important. It shines a light on your purpose, even if it does so in a way that feels uncomfortable. So when you feel fear, don't run. Don't retreat. Ask yourself, what is this fear trying to tell me? What does it mean that this makes me nervous? The answer is almost always that you're stepping into something real, something big, something that matters to you on a deep level. Fear wouldn't show up if you didn't care. You don't get scared about things that don't matter. You don't fear things that have no impact on your identity or future. Fear is evidence that you're about to touch something important. It's your internal system's way of saying, pay attention, this moment could change everything. But here's where most people go wrong. They interpret fear as a command. They think if I feel fear, I should stop. But fear doesn't mean stop. It means look closer. It means prepare, focus, and proceed. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's action in spite of fear. Every person you admire, the athletes, the entrepreneurs, the leaders, they all feel fear. Fear differences, they move with it instead of against it. They feel the fear and act anyway. That's what separates the people who live fully from the people who stay stuck. Fear thrives in silence and stillness. The longer you wait, the louder it gets. The more you hesitate, the more it grows. Fear feeds on your inaction. It builds stories in your mind. What if I fail? Bang. What will people think? What if I'm not good enough? But none of those thoughts are facts. They're just possibilities. And guess what? The positive outcomes are also possible. But fear rarely shows you those. That's why you have to learn to question your fear, challenge it. Because the minute you act, the minute you do the thing, fear loses its grip. You build evidence that you can handle it. And with every action, that fear becomes a little smaller. When fear arises, use it as a map. Where is it pointing you? What part of your life does it show up in most? Is it your career, your relationships, your creative pursuits? That's probably where your growth is hiding. That's probably where you need to lean in. Not because it's easy, but because it matters. And when something matters, fear is always close by. But it's not there to block you. It's there to test you, to ask, how bad do you want this? Are you willing to get uncomfortable for it? The people who build meaningful lives aren't fearless. They're just intentional. They don't let fear drive the car. They let it ride in the passenger seat. They acknowledge it, but they don't hand it the wheel. They say, yeah, I see you, fear, but I'm going anyway. That mindset changes everything. Because once you stop fighting fear and start using it as a guide, you unlock a whole new level of power. You begin to take action not just despite your fear, but because of it. Because you know that fear is the gatekeeper to your next chapter. Fear also teaches you to be present. It heightens your senses. It puts you in the moment. That's why things feel so vivid when you're doing something scary, because you're awake. You're fully engaged. You're not sleepwalking through your day. And in those moments, life becomes electric. You're not just existing, you're living. And that's the whole point. So the next time you feel fear creeping in, don't shut it down. Don't label it as a weakness. See it for what it is, a compass, a flashing arrow pointing you toward what matters most. And then do the brave thing. Say yes. Make the call. Take the leap. Step into the room, speak the words, start the journey. Let your fear be the signpost that tells you you're on the right path. Because if it scares you, it's probably worth doing. Taking action before you feel ready is the secret. Waiting to feel ready is one of the biggest lies we tell ourselves, a trap disguised as logic. We think readiness is a feeling that will arrive like a notification, a calm wave of certainty and clarity that lets us know it's time to move. But it never shows up like that. Not really. The truth is, we don't feel ready until after we've already taken the first step. Action creates readiness, not the other way around. Most people sit on dreams, plans, and ideas because they believe there's some magical threshold where everything will click, where confidence will appear, where motivation will stay consistent. But the people who actually do things, launch businesses, write books, switch careers, speak up, take risks, those people rarely feel ready in the beginning. They just decide to start anyway. They feel the doubt, they feel the fear, and they move with it. That's the shift. That's the difference. They've learned that waiting for readiness is a form of procrastination dressed up as self-care. There will always be reasons to wait. Always. There will always be something you don't know, something you haven't figured out, some part of you that feels underqualified or unprepared. But if you let those reasons run your life, you'll never start. And starting is everything. Starting, even imperfectly, is what opens the door to momentum. It's what gives you feedback, lessons, experience, growth. You can't learn your way into action. You have to act your way into learning. Think about the first time you did anything that mattered. Your first job, your first big presentation, the first time you spoke in front of a group, or tried something new. Did you feel 100% ready? Probably not. You might have been nervous, anxious, unsure of yourself. But once you did it, once you took that step, you realized something powerful. You didn't need to be fully ready. You just needed to begin. And in beginning, you figured things out. You adapted. You rose to the challenge. That's what people forget. You grow into readiness by doing, not waiting. Every big success story started before the person was fully equipped. Entrepreneurs launch without the perfect pitch. Artists paint without knowing if anyone will care. Speakers walk onto the stage with shaking hands and hearts pounding. Parents bring babies home with no idea how to raise a human. Everyone starts from a place of uncertainty, but that's what makes it meaningful. That's where the growth is. The lie that you need to be ready is rooted in fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of wasting time or making mistakes. But none of those fears are fatal. Failing is not the worst-case scenario. Never trying is. Making a mistake is not as dangerous as staying stuck in the same place, paralyzed by your own hesitation. You don't build a life you're proud of by playing it safe and waiting for perfect conditions. So that is dangerous. You build it by deciding, even though I'm not sure how this will go, I'm doing it anyway. Action builds confidence. Every single time you do something, before you feel ready, you prove to yourself that you can handle more than you thought, that you're more capable than you gave yourself credit for. And with each small win, each courageous step, your belief in yourself grows. Not because you were magically confident beforehand, but because you earned that confidence through action. If you're sitting on an idea, a goal, a change you know you need to make, don't wait for the moment you feel completely sure. It won't come. And that's not a sign to stop. It's a sign to go.
The discomfort you feel?
That's part of the process. That resistance you sense? It's a sign that what you're doing matters. You're not wrong for feeling fear or doubt. You're human. But those feelings don't mean you're not ready. They mean you care. They mean you're pushing into new territory. Think of it this way. The plane doesn't reach cruising altitude until it takes off. You don't feel stable or in control until you've already left the ground. But you can't get there unless you're willing to take off while still feeling unsure. Your ideas, your growth, your potential, they're all waiting on the other side of action. And here's the wild part. Once you start, your mind begins to catch up. You realize it wasn't that you weren't ready. It was that you were scared. And fear disguised itself as logic. But now that you've moved, now that you've acted, that fear starts to lose its power. Your mind stops protecting you from a threat that never really existed, and it starts working with you instead of against you. Your confidence catches up to your courage. So take the step. Send the email. Make the call. Raise your hand. Say yes. Launch the idea. Write the first line. CVA. Write the first line. Go on the run, even if you're out of shape. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to feel invincible. You just have to move. Because readiness isn't a prerequisite, it's a result. And if you're waiting for the moment you feel 100% ready, you'll miss the life you were meant to live. When you stay in your comfort zone, you stop challenging your mind, and that has consequences most people never even notice until it's too late. The brain is like a muscle. It thrives on stimulation, on challenge, on novelty. But just like a muscle, if you don't use it, it starts to weaken. It starts to slow down. It begins to operate on autopilot. You stop thinking critically. You stop solving new problems. You stop stretching your capacity. And the worst part? You don't even realize it's happening. We live in a world that makes it easy to stay mentally stagnant. The same routine, the same people, the same problems, the same conversations, the same scrolling, the same shows, the same habits. Day after day, our brains fall into patterns, patterns. And patterns can be efficient, yes, but they can also be prisons. When everything feels familiar, you stop questioning, you stop creating, and eventually you stop growing. That mental comfort starts to feel normal, but it's really just decay in disguise. When you avoid discomfort, when you avoid challenges that make your brain work harder, you're choosing ease over evolution. But growth never comes from ease. Growth comes from friction, from having to figure things out, from stepping into situations where you don't have all the answers. When you're forced to adapt, you become more alert, more focused, more resilient. That kind of engagement activates new neural pathways. It keeps your brain young, sharp, flexible. Let's get clear. Your brain doesn't grow from knowing, it grows from learning. It grows from learning. And learning only happens when you're exposed to something unfamiliar. When you're challenged, when you're stretched. That's when real development takes place. When you're doing something you've never done before, when you're uncomfortable, when you have to think differently. That's when your brain lights up. But if you avoid those moments because they feel hard or awkward or scary, then you're slowly teaching your brain to settle for less. And that has consequences. A comfortable brain is a complacent brain. It starts relying on shortcuts. It stops innovating. It gets bored, and boredom is the gateway to burnout, even if your calendar is full. That's why so many people feel exhausted doing the same thing over and over. It's not the work that's draining them. It's the lack of mental stimulation. It's the repetition. It's the emotional dullness of never being challenged. Now, here's the powerful truth. Your brain is always ready to evolve. Neuroplasticity, the ability of your brain to rewire itself, is available to you at any age. That means you can get sharper. You can think faster. You can become more creative. But only if you give your brain something to work with, something to chew on, something to stretch toward. That only happens when you intentionally step into discomfort, when you read something outside your usual interests, when you have a conversation with someone who sees the world differently. When you take on a project that forces you to learn new skills. Every time you do that, every time you choose growth over comfort, you're investing in your mental strength. And that investment pays off in every part of your life. You start solving problems more effectively. You start seeing opportunities that others miss. You become more adaptable when life throws curveballs. You start thinking like a leader, a creator, a builder. And that's not talent, that's training. That's the result of challenging your brain on a consistent basis. But here's the thing. You don't need to wait for some huge opportunity to do this. Mental growth doesn't require a dramatic life change. It requires intention. It means saying yes to the things that scare you a little. It means doing something different, even when it's inconvenient. It means getting curious instead of defensive when you hear a new idea. It means being willing to look dumb, to be a beginner, to fail forward. And yes, it's uncomfortable. That's the point. Discomfort is a signal that your brain is being asked to work harder, to build new connections, to level up. It's not a problem to be solved. It's a path to be followed. The more often you follow that path, the easier it becomes to step outside your mental bubble. You develop the habit of curiosity, the habit of courage, and with that, your mental agility expands. This isn't just about being smart, it's about staying alive. Because mental stagnation leads to emotional stagnation. It leads to dullness, to apathy, to a life that feels fine on paper but flat in reality. But when you challenge your brain, when you feed it new inputs, when you push it to work in unfamiliar ways, you reignite your passion, your creativity, your vision. So shake up your routine, take the class, ask the question. Start the thing you've been putting off because you're afraid you'll suck at it. That's where the mental magic happens. That's where you start to rewire yourself into someone sharper, bolder, more fully awake. You have the power to keep growing, but it's a choice. And it starts the moment you decide to stop settling for mental comfort and start choosing mental challenge instead.